I'm Brandon, 32, and I built GreenVista Landscaping from nothing but a second-hand mower and a dream. 6 years of back-breaking work, and I created something beautiful. Then my father called me into his office and said, "I'm giving the company to Mason. He has kids to feed." Just like that, my life's work vanished. So I walked away, without a fight, watched from a distance, and let karma handle the rest. Before I tell you how my brother's business genius led to an IRS audit, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever been blindsided by family. Growing up, I was always fascinated by plants and landscape design. While other kids were playing video games, I was sketching garden layouts and learning plant names. My earliest memory is helping my grandfather tend his vegetable garden when I was just 6 years old. Something about transforming outdoor spaces spoke to my soul. At 15, I started mowing lawns around the neighborhood for pocket money. Nothing fancy, just me, a push mower I fixed up from the junkyard, and a determination to save for college. Every dollar went into a special account labeled Future. Unlike my older brother Mason, who blew his money on whatever caught his eye that week, I had a plan. After high school, I enrolled in the State University's landscape architecture program. Those 4 years were transformative. I learned design principles, plant science, and sustainable landscaping techniques. I also minored in business management, knowing I wanted to build something of my own someday. Professors noticed my dedication, and one even connected me with an internship at a prestigious landscaping firm in the city. College wasn't easy financially. My parents helped Mason with his tuition when he briefly attended community college before dropping out, but they claimed to have no extra money when my turn came. I worked 2 part-time jobs while carrying a full course load. Sometimes I'd go to class after pulling an all-nighter to finish a design project fueled by nothing but black coffee and determination. After graduation, I worked for a commercial landscaping company for 2 years, learning the business from the ground up. I saved every penny possible living in a tiny studio apartment and driving a truck that was more rust than metal. When I finally had $20,000 saved, I took the leap and started GreenVista Landscaping. Those early days were brutal. I was a one-man operation, handling everything from client consultations to the physical labor of mowing, planting, and hauling materials. My truck broke down at least once a month. I'd be up at 4 in the morning preparing quotes and invoices, then work in the field until sunset, come home covered in dirt and sweat shower, and start the cycle again. Dad showed zero interest in my business at first. Playing in the dirt isn't a real career, he'd say whenever I tried to talk about my progress. Mom would give sympathetic smiles, but change the subject. Their disinterest hurt, but it also fueled me. I was determined to prove them wrong. Slowly, my client list grew. I focused on quality and personal attention, things the bigger companies often overlooked. When Mrs. Harrington, my 5th client, was thrilled with how I transformed her backyard, she recommended me to her entire social circle. Suddenly, I had more work than I could handle alone. Hiring my first employee was terrifying. Justin was a hard-working college kid who needed flexible hours. I created detailed training systems to ensure the GreenVista standard of quality would be maintained even when I couldn't be on site. Within 6 months, I needed to hire 2 more people. By year 3, GreenVista had 15 employees, a fleet of 5 trucks, and specialized equipment for every aspect of landscaping. We had expanded from basic lawn maintenance to comprehensive landscape design services, including hardscaping irrigation systems and sustainable garden planning. Our annual revenue had crossed the 7-figure mark. The company headquarters was a proud moment. I purchased a small commercial property with office space, equipment storage, and a nursery area for plants. The day I hung the GreenVista sign on the building, I took a photo and sent it to my parents. Dad replied with "Niece, does it make money?" That was the extent of his enthusiasm. Despite the lack of family support, I found deep satisfaction in building something meaningful. Our clients became like family. The Westridge Neighborhood Association trusted us exclusively with their common areas. The Pinecrest Hotel hired us to redesign their entire outdoor experience. The City Parks Department contracted us for special projects. What truly set GreenVista apart was our commitment to environmentally friendly practices. We pioneered water-efficient irrigation systems when most companies were still installing wasteful sprinklers. We composted landscape waste and used it to enrich soil naturally. We specialized in native plant designs that required less maintenance and supported local ecosystems. These innovations earned us features in industry magazines and a growing reputation as forward-thinking experts. Every success was built on long hours, careful planning, and reinvesting profits back into the business. I paid myself just enough to live comfortably, but modestly. The business came first. Unlike my brother's get-rich-quick schemes, I was building something sustainable that would last for decades. If I had known what was coming, would I have structured things differently from the beginning? Absolutely. But I trusted my family even if they never fully supported my vision. That trust would prove to be my biggest business mistake. My father, Robert Wilson, built his plumbing supply company through what he called old-school values. What he really meant was that he believed in a strict family hierarchy where the oldest son was the crown prince. Since childhood, Mason received preferential treatment as the firstborn, despite his questionable choices. Dad would often say Mason is finding himself whenever my brother failed at something new, which happened with alarming regularity. Mason was 5 years older than me, but seemed perpetually stuck in adolescence. His first business venture was a sports memorabilia shop that closed within 8 months after he sold products on credit to friends who never paid. Next came a food truck that failed health inspections twice before he abandoned it. His brief partnership in a small construction company ended when his partners bought him out, citing irreconcilable differences in business philosophy, which was a polite way of saying Mason never showed up but expected full profits. Despite these failures, Mason remained the golden child. He married Rachel, a sweet but enabling woman, and quickly had 3 children, Ethan, Lily, and Noah. Each new grandchild cemented Mason's position as the family favorite. Dad would beam with pride at Mason's role as family man, while questioning why I remained single, suggesting there must be something wrong with me for focusing on career over family. The financial reality behind Mason's family life was less picture perfect. He and Rachel lived in a house my parents helped them buy. They drove cars my parents co-financed. Mason's business losses were covered by loans from my parents that were never repaid. Every few months, there would be a new crisis requiring financial intervention. Meanwhile, my growing success with GreenVista became almost an irritation to my father. "You got lucky with timing," he'd say. Or, "Anyone could do well in that business if they had your advantages." The irony of these statements, given how he had financially supported Mason through multiple failures, while I built my business without help, seemed lost on him. Our mother Elizabeth kept the peace by avoiding conflict. "Your father just wants what's best for everyone," she'd say whenever I expressed frustration. "Mason needs more support because he struggles." Her passive approach enabled the dysfunction, but confronting her only made her retreat further into denial. Sunday family dinners became increasingly tense affairs. Mason would arrive late, complaining about whatever job he was currently half-heartedly pursuing. Dad would offer unsolicited advice and promises of help. I would sit quietly, attempting to avoid the spotlight, but inevitably, Dad would turn to me with some criticism about GreenVista. "You're charging too little," he'd say one week, then, "Your prices are driving away potential customers the next." As GreenVista's profits grew, Mason suddenly developed an interest in landscaping. "Brandon makes it look easy," he commented during a dinner when I mentioned a new commercial contract. "I've always had a good eye for that kind of thing." Dad immediately latched onto this casual remark. "You know Brandon, your brother, has natural talent for design. Maybe you should bring him into the business. He could help with management while you focus on the labor." The suggestion blindsided me. GreenVista has a management team already. We have systems in place that work well. "Family businesses need family," Dad insisted. "Mason has real-world experience that would benefit you." "Failed businesses aren't the kind of experience I need," I replied immediately, regretting my bluntness when Mom's expression fell. "Everyone fails sometimes," Dad said sharply. "The difference is that Mason picks himself up and tries again. Maybe you could learn something from his resilience." These conversations repeated with increasing frequency until Mom called me privately, her voice tight with anxiety. "Please just let Mason shadow you for a while. Your father is worried about his financial situation, and it would mean so much to him." Against my better judgment, I agreed to let Mason observe the business operations for a few weeks. Just to learn, I specified. No official position. The warning signs appeared immediately. Mason showed up late to his first day, explaining he had to drop the kids at school. Fair enough, but then he spent the morning on personal calls instead of paying attention during the team meeting. When I asked him to join me for a client consultation, he suggested improvements to my design in front of the client, without understanding the site's drainage issues or the client's specific requests. Your brother has good instincts, the client said politely, but I could see her confidence wavering. That afternoon I found Mason in my office reviewing confidential client contracts, just trying to understand the business model, he said with a shrug when I questioned him. Dad always says, I have a knack for spotting opportunities. By the end of the first week, 3 employees had asked me privately about Mason's role. Is he taking over your position, my operations manager? Angela worried. He told the maintenance crew he'll be making schedule changes soon. I confronted Mason about overstepping boundaries, but he brushed it off. I'm just trying to be helpful. Dad thinks the business could use a fresh perspective. And there it was, the reality that my father was the invisible hand behind Mason's sudden interest in my company. I didn't yet realize how far that interference had already gone. The problems multiplied rapidly once Mason established himself in the GreenVista office. He created inefficiencies everywhere he went, like a reverse Midas touch. Schedules that had run smoothly for years suddenly fell apart. Crews would arrive at job sites to find that Mason had promised clients additional services without adjusting the time allocations or charging for the extra work. Client complaints began trickling in. The Westridge Neighborhood Association, our biggest residential contract, called to express concerns about declining service quality. The attention to detail isn't what it used to be, the association president told me. And your brother assured us you would throw in seasonal flower rotations at no extra cost, which seems inconsistent with our contract. I spent hours doing damage control, explaining that Mason wasn't authorized to make such promises. Privately, I addressed these issues with him, but he deflected responsibility. I'm just being responsive to client needs, he said. You're too rigid with the business model. Meanwhile, Mason began taking credit for my work and ideas. During a presentation to a potential commercial client, he interrupted repeatedly to claim that certain innovative approaches were his suggestions. Brandon and I have been discussing ways to revolutionize the business, he told the client with a winning smile. 2 heads are better than 1. Dad started dropping by the office unannounced, something he had never done during the years I was building the business. He would nod approvingly at Mason's presence and make comments like, "Good to see you taking my advice about bringing family into the fold, Brandon." One evening after everyone had left, I discovered financial documents missing from my office. The quarterly projections, client contracts, and vendor agreements I kept in a specific folder were nowhere to be found. The next morning, Mason called in sick, claiming his youngest had a fever. That afternoon, Angela pulled me aside. I saw your father's car at Wilkins' law office yesterday. Mason was with him. James Wilkins was GreenVista's business attorney, handling our contracts and legal compliance. A meeting involving my father, brother, and company lawyer, without my knowledge, sent alarm bells ringing. I called James directly, but his assistant said he was unavailable. He mentioned he's working on something for the Wilson family, she added, sounding uncomfortable. He said to direct your questions to your father. 2 days later, Dad called a family meeting at his house. When I arrived, Mason's car was already in the driveway, and I was surprised to see James Wilkins' vehicle as well. Inside, they sat around the dining room table like a tribunal, with Mom hovering nervously in the background. Brandon, we need to discuss the future of GreenVista. Dad began without preamble. I've been reviewing the business structure and financials, and I've made some decisions. You've been reviewing my company's financials? I asked, already feeling sick to my stomach. Dad waved his hand dismissively. The holding company that provided your initial investment has controlling interest. You know this. What he was referring to was a technical truth twisted beyond recognition. When I started, GreenVista Dad had offered to create a family holding company to protect the business from liability. At the time, I viewed it as his way of finally showing support for my venture. The holding company invested $25,000 for equipment purchases, while I had already invested my personal savings of $20,000. I had repaid that investment triple-fold over the years, but the ownership structure remained in place, as I had never seen a reason to change it. I've decided to transfer operational control of GreenVista to Mason. Dad continued. He has a family to support, and this business provides the stable income he needs to give my grandchildren the life they deserve. The room spun around me. And what about me? What about the 6 years I've put into building this company from nothing? You're young, single, and clearly talented, Dad replied as if he were complimenting me. You can start over. Mason can't. He has children to feed and a mortgage to pay. Children to feed. The mortgage on the house. You bought them. My voice rose, despite my efforts to remain calm. And what about my employees? The clients who trust me specifically. Mason leaned forward with a patronizing smile. I'll take good care of your staff, Brandon, and the clients love me already. I've been building relationships with them. For 3 weeks, I've spent years earning their trust. James cleared his throat uncomfortably. Legally, the holding company has the right to make management changes. Your employment contract doesn't guarantee your position as CEO. He slid some documents across the table. This severance package is actually quite generous. I flipped through the papers in disbelief. They were offering me 6 months' salary and a senior consultant position if I wanted to stay with the company under Mason's leadership. This is my company, I said, my voice breaking slightly. I built it from nothing. I worked 80-hour weeks for years. I reinvested profits instead of paying myself. I created every system, trained every employee, developed every innovation that makes GreenVista successful. And no one is denying your contribution, Dad said, in the tone he used when he thought he was being reasonable. But business is business. Mason needs this opportunity, and you don't. Mom finally spoke from the doorway. Brandon, please try to understand. Your brother has struggled for so long. You've always been the capable one. You'll land on your feet no matter what. In that moment, I realized that my competence had become my punishment. Because I had proven I could succeed on my own, they felt justified in taking everything from me to give to Mason, who had proven repeatedly he couldn't succeed on his own. This isn't right, I said, standing up. This isn't just business. This is theft. Now you're being dramatic, Dad snapped. You have 2 choices. Accept the new arrangement and help your brother succeed, or take the severance and move on. Either way, the decision is made. Mason had the audacity to look hurt. I thought you'd be happy for me, bro. Finally getting my chance to provide for my family the right way. I looked around the room at these people who were supposed to love me. My father's stern disapproval, my mother's pleading eyes, my brother's poorly concealed triumph, and even James's professional discomfort. In that moment, I understood that I would never win with them. The game had been rigged from the start. I need time to think, I managed to say, gathering the documents and walking out without another word. The next week passed in a blur of sleepless nights and desperate strategizing. During the day, I went through the motions at GreenVista, watching as Mason paraded around the office with increasing authority. Employees shot me. Confused, sympathetic glances, clearly sensing something was wrong, but not knowing the details. I consulted Patricia Hammond, a business attorney unconnected to my father. She reviewed the company documents and delivered the grim news I expected. Your father structured this cleverly, she explained. The holding company does indeed have controlling interest. While we could challenge this, as a breach of good faith, litigation would be lengthy, expensive, and highly public. And family business disputes are notoriously difficult to win. What about the value I've added? The company is worth 20 times what it was when we started. Patricia nodded sympathetically. That's exactly why they're doing this now. You've built something valuable and they're capitalizing on it. The severance they're offering is insultingly low given your contribution. But legally, they're within their rights unless we can prove fraud. And can we? She hesitated. Not based on what I'm seeing here. Your father stayed within the letter of the law, if not the spirit. I'm sorry, Brandon. I left her office with a heavy heart but a clearer mind. I had 2 real options. Stay and work under Mason's incompetent leadership, watching him destroy everything I'd built, or walk away and start over. The financial calculation was simple. Fighting would cost tens of thousands in legal fees with no guarantee of success. Staying would mean daily humiliation and a front-row seat to the dismantling of my life's work. Walking away meant starting from zero again, but with the knowledge and experience I'd gained. The emotional calculation was harder. GreenVista wasn't just a business to me. It was my identity, my achievement, the proof that I could create something meaningful. Walking away felt like amputating a part of myself. I called my former professor and mentor Dr. Leland, who had always given sage advice. After listening to my situation, he was quiet for a long moment. "Brandon, I've watched you build something remarkable both in terms of a business and in terms of your character. Neither of those things can be taken from you, even if the business entity changes hands. But 6 years of work I started is not lost," he interrupted firmly. "The knowledge, the relationships, the reputation you've built, those go with you. And sometimes walking away from a toxic situation is the ultimate proof of strength, not weakness." He paused, before adding, "Success is the best revenge. If you stay, you give them power over your daily life. If you walk away and thrive elsewhere, you show them what they lost." That night, I made my decision. The next morning, I requested a meeting with Dad and Mason at the GreenVista office. They arrived, looking smug, clearly expecting me to capitulate. "I've made my decision," I told them, maintaining a calm I didn't entirely feel. "I won't be staying with GreenVista in any capacity." Dad frowned. "Don't be foolish. You're throwing away a perfectly good salary out of pride." "No, I'm choosing to value myself more than you do." I slid the unsigned severance agreement across the desk. "I've made some modifications." They looked over my counterproposal, a larger severance, reflecting my actual contribution to the company's growth, immediate payment of the profit sharing that would have come to me at the end of the fiscal year, and no non-compete clause. "This is outrageous," Dad sputtered. "The non-compete is non-negotiable." "Then so is my cooperation during the transition," I replied evenly. "You can have a smooth handover of client relationships and systems, or you can have a non-compete. Not both." Mason looked worried for the first time. "Dad, maybe we should consider—" "Absolutely not," Dad cut him off. "We're being more than generous already." I stood up. "Then I guess we're done here. I'll be taking my personal items and leaving today. Good luck explaining to the clients and staff why the founder of the company has suddenly departed." "You would sabotage your own company out of spite," Dad demanded. "It's not my company anymore. Remember, you made that very clear." I maintained eye contact until he looked away. "I won't say anything negative about GreenVista to clients or staff. I respect what I built too much for that. But I won't pretend this transition is my choice or that I endorse it." For a brief moment, I thought I saw a flicker of doubt in my father's eyes, but it vanished quickly. "Take your personal items and be out." "By noon," he said coldly. It took less than an hour to pack up the mementos that really mattered: my design awards photos of particularly successful projects and a few small gifts from grateful clients. The business itself, paperwork, client, relationships, systems I had built, all of that would remain. Angela caught me as I was carrying the box to my truck. "It's true then? You're leaving?" Her eyes were wide with disbelief. "Family business politics," I said simply. "Mason will be taking over." "But you are GreenVista," she protested. "Everyone knows that." "The company will continue. You're good at your job, Angela. The team is strong." "Will you start something new?" she asked quietly. "Eventually. I need some time first." As I placed the box in my truck, I saw other employees watching from windows. I gave a small wave, then drove away from the business I had built, leaving behind everything except my knowledge, skills, and determination. That evening, Dad called with a slightly improved severance offer that still included the non-compete. I declined politely but firmly. "I wish you and Mason success with GreenVista," I said, meaning it more than he probably believed. I didn't want the business to fail. It contained the hard work of good people who depended on their jobs. As I hung up, I felt a strange combination of grief and liberation. I had lost something precious, but I was free from the dysfunctional family dynamic that had shadowed my success for years. Whatever came next would be entirely on my terms. After walking away from GreenVista, I gave myself 1 month to process everything. I rented a small cabin by the lake, 2 hours from the city, and spent days hiking, thinking, and planning. The hurt and betrayal still stung, but with each passing day, my focus shifted from what I had lost to what I could create next. The landscaping industry had been my passion since childhood, and that hadn't changed. What had changed was my perspective on business structure and focus. I would build something different this time, something uniquely mine that couldn't be taken away. I moved to Riverdale, a growing city, 40 miles from my hometown. Close enough to tap into my professional network, but far enough to avoid daily reminders of GreenVista. Using my personal savings, I established Terra Renewal, a boutique landscaping firm specializing in sustainable, eco-friendly designs for high-end residential properties. The business model was lean and specialized by design. Instead of trying to serve every possible landscaping need, I focused exclusively on comprehensive landscape transformations for clients willing to invest in premium sustainable outdoor spaces. No lawn mowing, no routine maintenance, just innovative design and high-quality installation with environmental consciousness at the core. My first client came through Dr. Leland, who connected me with a university colleague building a new home. I told him, "You're the best in the business for sustainable landscape design, Doctor," Leland said. "He wants something special." That first project became my showcase. I designed a water-efficient landscape featuring native plants, a rainwater collection system, permeable hardscaping, and solar-powered lighting. Every element was beautiful and environmentally sound. When completed, the client hosted a garden party that attracted attention from exactly the type of homeowners I wanted to reach. Word spread quickly among a certain circle of environmentally conscious professionals with disposable income. Within 3 months, I had 6 major projects underway and a waiting list forming. I hired selectively, bringing on 2 skilled landscape architects and partnering with specialized contractors for installation. Meanwhile, news about GreenVista trickled in through industry contacts. Mason had immediately implemented changes, starting with laying off 3 of the most experienced and highest-paid staff members. Cost-cutting measures, he called it, but the industry recognized it as short-sightedness. Those employees had relationships with key clients and specialized knowledge that couldn't be easily replaced. Dad had initially micromanaged every aspect of the transition, creating confusion about who was actually in charge. Vendors reported receiving contradictory instructions from Mason and my father, leading to delayed orders and project setbacks. The first major client complaint came from the Westridge Neighborhood Association, historically GreenVista's most loyal client. According to my former supplier, who still provided plants to both companies, Westridge was dissatisfied with declining service quality and Mason's dismissive response to their concerns. "Your brother told them they were being too picky," my supplier friend reported. "Didn't go over well with people paying premium rates." I maintained a strict professional policy of never disparaging GreenVista. When former clients contacted me, I simply explained that I had moved on to a new venture with a different focus. If they expressed dissatisfaction with GreenVista's new management, I listened sympathetically, but offered no criticism of my own. About 4 months after my departure, Angela called me. "I gave my notice today," she said, without preamble. "I'm sorry to hear that," I replied carefully. "You were the backbone of operations." She laughed without humor. "Not anymore. Mason brought in his friend from college to oversee operations. Guy knows nothing about landscaping, but talks like he invented it." She described a company in disarray. Basic systems I had established, scheduling, quality control, inventory management, were being ignored or randomly changed. Employees were confused and frustrated. Client complaints were increasing. "And the finances," she added hesitantly. "I probably shouldn't say anything, but Mason bought himself a new truck through the company. Top of the line, way more expensive than the work trucks we use. And he's taking his family on a business trip to Hawaii next month." I winced but kept my comments neutral. Change is always difficult in a company. Things might stabilize. Maybe, she said, unconvinced. "Anyway, I'm calling because I'm looking for a new position. I heard your new venture is doing well. I had been operating with minimal administrative support, but Angela's skills would be invaluable as Terra Renewal grew. I'd be honored to have you join us. The operation is smaller, more specialized, but we're growing steadily. Within 6 months of my departure, Terra Renewal had established itself as the premier sustainable landscaping firm in the region. We had a waiting list of clients attracted by our innovative approach and impeccable execution. I was working hard, but on my own terms, building something aligned with my values. 7 months after I left GreenVista, lost the Westridge contract. 1 month later, they lost the Pinecrest Hotel. Former employees continued to leave, often reaching out to me for reference letters or job opportunities. I hired those who fit Terra Renewal's specialized focus, and helped others find positions with reputable companies in the industry. Through industry channels, I heard about Mason's increasingly desperate business decisions. He slashed prices to undercut competitors, but without the expertise to maintain quality, this only resulted in unhappy clients and razor-thin margins. He began taking deposits for projects and delaying starts, using the cash flow from new clients to complete work for existing ones. A classic warning sign of financial troubles. Dad had stepped back from day-to-day involvement due to health problems, high blood pressure, and stress-related issues. Without his oversight, Mason's poor financial decisions accelerated. A former GreenVista manager who had joined a supplier company told me Mason had extended their payment terms repeatedly and was now on credit hold with multiple vendors. I received this news with mixed emotions. I took no pleasure in seeing a once thriving business struggle, especially knowing that good people's livelihoods were at stake. But there was a certain vindication in seeing the natural consequences of choices made without regard for the business fundamentals I had established. 9 months after my departure, I received an unexpected call from an IRS agent named Richard Coleman. Mr. Plive. Wilson, we're conducting an investigation into GreenVista Landscaping, and we understand you were the founder and former CEO. My stomach tightened. That's correct. I left the company about 9 months ago when ownership transferred to my brother. We'd like to ask you some questions about certain financial practices during the transition period and afterward. This is a routine part of our investigation. I faced an ethical dilemma. While I had no desire to protect Mason from the consequences of his actions, I also didn't want to appear vindictive or eager to damage the company. I consulted briefly with my attorney, who advised me to cooperate factually, but neutrally. I'm happy to provide any factual information I have, I told the agent. But I should note that I haven't been involved with the company's operations or finances since my departure. The questions focused on specific financial transactions, tax filing practices, and client billing procedures. I answered truthfully, clarifying which systems had been in place during my tenure and which had changed after I left based on what former employees had shared with me. 2 days later, a former GreenVista employee who still worked there called me in a panic. The IRS showed up at the office today with subpoenas. They're taking boxes of records. Mason is freaking out. The following week, local business news reported that GreenVista Landscaping was under investigation for potential tax evasion and questionable financial practices. The article mentioned significant changes in financial reporting following a management transition last year. As much as I had moved on with my life and business, the news hit me hard. GreenVista had been my creation, my passion project. Seeing its name associated with scandal felt personal even though I was no longer connected to it. That evening, my phone rang with a number I instantly recognized: my mother's cell phone. We had barely spoken since I left GreenVista, just brief, strained conversations during holidays. Brandon, her voice sounded thin and frightened. Your father had a heart attack this morning. He's in the hospital. The doctors say it was brought on by stress. The IRS investigation. It's all too much for him. The news sent a wave of complicated emotions through me. Anger at how they had treated me, concern for my father's health, frustration at being pulled back into family drama I had worked so hard to escape. I'm sorry to hear that, I said finally. Is he stable? Yes, but he's asking for you. Please, Brandon. Whatever happened with the business, he's still your father. I closed my eyes, torn between self-protection and familial obligation. I'll come tomorrow morning, I said at last. But Mom, I need you to understand something. I'm coming because he's family, and he's ill. not to fix whatever mess Mason has created with GreenVista. I know, she said quietly. Just please come. As I hung up, I realized that walking away had been only the first step in a longer journey. The true test was maintaining my boundaries while remaining true to my own values, even when facing the family that had betrayed me. 1 year after walking away from GreenVista, Terra Renewal was thriving beyond my initial projections. We had a 6-month waiting list for design projects, a team of 12 specialized employees, and a reputation as the region's premier sustainable landscaping firm. Industry publications had featured our innovative approaches, and we'd won 2 design awards for eco-friendly residential landscapes. The contrast with GreenVista's trajectory couldn't have been starker. What had once been the area's leading full-service landscaping company was now struggling to maintain basic operations. Each week brought new reports of decline from industry contacts. Following my father's heart attack, I had visited him in the hospital as promised. The conversation was strained but civil. He looked older, diminished by illness and worry. For the first time in my adult life, he spoke to me without criticism or comparison to Mason. The business is in trouble, he admitted, staring at the ceiling rather than meeting my eyes. Mason made some decisions that weren't wise. I'm sorry to hear that, I replied neutrally. The IRS investigation is serious. They're looking at 3 years of tax filings. There are discrepancies they're questioning. I maintained my composure. That sounds complicated. He finally looked at me directly. Brandon, I know you have every right to walk away, but your mother and we might need help navigating this. It was as close to an acknowledgement of wrongdoing as I'd ever heard from him. Not an apology, not a recognition of the specific harm done to me, but a crack in the facade of certainty that had defined his treatment of me for decades. I can recommend a good tax attorney, I offered, but I can't get involved with GreenVista's issues directly. That wouldn't be appropriate, given the circumstances. He nodded slightly, accepting this boundary. We spoke briefly about his health prognosis and my new business, before I left promising my mother I would check in regularly about his recovery. The following week, I received a detailed briefing from a former GreenVista manager who had recently left the company. The picture they painted was one of systemic mismanagement and increasingly desperate financial maneuvers. According to this insider, Mason had begun manipulating the books shortly after taking control. Client deposits were recorded as complete revenue before projects were finished. Expenses were miscategorized or deferred to make monthly profits look higher. Payroll taxes had been underpaid, with the difference used to cover operational shortfalls. Most concerning, Mason had apparently directed staff to create 2 sets of records for certain cash-paying clients, one for official company records and one showing lower payment amounts for tax purposes. This deliberate attempt at tax evasion was what had triggered the IRS investigation after a disgruntled former employee reported the practice. The company's reputation had collapsed alongside its financial stability. Review sites now featured complaints about unfinished projects, poor quality work, and unprofessional management. Industry partners who had once valued their relationship with GreenVista now distanced themselves publicly. Local business reporter Stephanie Chen published a detailed article contrasting GreenVista's decline with Terra Renewal's rise, highlighting the different management approaches without directly mentioning the family connection. While one established landscaping firm struggles with legal and financial challenges following a management change, a new competitor has quickly captured the high-end market with innovative sustainability practices, she wrote. The implied narrative was clear to anyone familiar with both companies. Meanwhile, GreenVista's legal troubles mounted. The IRS investigation expanded to include potential fraud charges. 3 clients filed lawsuits, alleging misuse of deposits for projects that were never completed. Suppliers initiated collection actions for unpaid invoices. Mason's personal finances appeared to be intertwined with the company's in problematic ways. Former employees reported that he had used company funds for family vacations, private school tuition for his children, and home renovations, all categorized as business expenses. I maintained professional distance throughout these developments, focusing on building Terra Renewal into the company I had always envisioned. We expanded our services to include consulting for commercial properties, seeking LEED certification through sustainable landscaping. We pioneered water conservation systems that reduced irrigation needs by 70% while maintaining lush aesthetics. 14 months after my departure from GreenVista, my mother called again, her voice tense. Mason's been served with personal tax liens. The IRS is going after their house and personal assets. Rachel took the children to stay with her parents. Your father is devastated. I listened quietly, offering sympathy without volunteering assistance. Years of family dynamics had taught me that rushing in to fix problems only enabled further dysfunction. Brandon, she continued hesitantly, your father would never ask this himself, but is there any possibility you might consider purchasing GreenVista's assets just to keep the name in the family somehow? The request was so unexpected, I laughed before I could stop myself. Mom, GreenVista isn't just facing financial problems. There are legal issues, reputation damage, client lawsuits. The company I built doesn't exist anymore, except as a liability. But it was your creation, she persisted. Don't you want to save it? The company I created was taken from me. I reminded her gently. I've built something new that better reflects my values and vision. I'm not going backward. She was silent for a long moment. I understand, she finally said, and for the first time, I thought perhaps she truly did. 2 weeks later, the local business journal reported that GreenVista Landscaping had filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. The filing listed assets of less than $400,000 against liabilities exceeding $2 million. The article noted that most company assets were encumbered by tax liens and creditor claims. The same day, I received an email from Mason, a first direct communication since our confrontation 16 months earlier. The message was brief. I should have listened to you about how to run the business. I'm sorry. Those 9 words, inadequate, as they were given the magnitude of what had happened, represented more acknowledgement than I had ever expected to receive. I didn't reply immediately, needing time to process my complex feelings about the situation. 3 former GreenVista clients contacted me that week, asking if Terra Renewal could take over maintenance of properties GreenVista had originally designed. I accepted these clients, selectively making clear that our approach might differ from what they were accustomed to, with a greater emphasis on sustainability. The final chapter of GreenVista's collapse played out in a series of legal proceedings. Mason reached a settlement with the IRS that included a payment plan for back taxes and penalties, avoiding criminal charges but accepting civil liability. My father, whose health had stabilized but remained fragile, was not implicated directly in the financial improprieties, having stepped back from operations before the most serious issues occurred. 18 months after walking away, I had successfully transformed the painful experience into something positive. Terra Renewal represented not just a business success, but a personal victory, a demonstration that my skills and vision were transferable and sustainable, independently of family dynamics or past betrayals. The landscaping industry in our region had noticed. At an industry conference, several colleagues approached me to express their respect for how I had handled the situation. You could have trashed them publicly, but you took the high road, one veteran landscaper told me. That says more about you than any design award. While I had moved forward successfully, the emotional impact of my family's betrayal remained a work in progress. I had established clearer boundaries, with my parents maintaining limited contact, focused on health updates and occasional brief visits. Mason and I remained distant, our relationship perhaps permanently altered by what had transpired. But the professional vindication was complete. The business principles I had established, the quality standards I had maintained, the ethical practices I had insisted upon, all had proven their value both in their presence at Terra Renewal and in their absence at GreenVista after my Terra Renewal departure. Success truly had been the best revenge. 2 years after walking away from GreenVista, I stood in the garden of Terra Renewal's newest project, a comprehensive, sustainable landscape redesign for the city's Botanical Garden Education Center. The space embodied everything I valued in landscaping: native plant diversity, water conservation systems, permeable surfaces that prevented runoff, and natural pest management approaches. More importantly, it represented the positive impact my work could have on the broader community, educating visitors about environmental stewardship through beautiful functional design. My father had called that morning, his voice stronger than it had been since his heart attack. The last of the GreenVista lawsuits was settled yesterday, he said. Without preamble, it's finally over. I had maintained limited but consistent contact with my parents throughout the aftermath of GreenVista's collapse. While I never offered financial assistance to Mason or the business, I had helped my parents navigate some of the legal complexities and connected them with appropriate professionals. That's good news, I replied. How are you feeling about it? He was quiet for a moment, relieved, embarrassed. I made a terrible mistake with the business, Brandon. I can see that now. It wasn't exactly the apology I deserved, but it was more acknowledgement than I had ever expected from a man who had spent his life convinced of his own infallibility. Age and illness had brought a measure of humility, however reluctant. We all make mistakes, I said, choosing generosity over resentment. What matters is learning from them. Your new business, he said, changing the subject slightly. I saw the article about the botanical garden project. It looks impressive. Coming from him, this qualified as effusive praise. Thank you. It's a special project for us. Us, I questioned. Terra Renewal has 20 employees now. We're selective about our projects, but we're growing steadily. Another pause. You've done well, son. Better than I expected. The backhanded compliment made me smile despite myself. Some things never changed entirely. I had a good foundation in understanding what works in business and what doesn't. After ending the call, I reflected on the journey of the past 2 years. Terra Renewal had surpassed GreenVista's peak profitability with fewer employees and lower overhead, focusing on quality over quantity. We had won regional awards for sustainable design and been featured in national industry publications. More importantly, I had built a company aligned with my values from the ground up, structured legally to remain under my control regardless of outside investment. Every employee had equity options and profit sharing. Our client relationships were based on education and collaboration rather than traditional service provider dynamics. Mason and I remained distant. He had found employment with a construction company, a position secured through one of my father's old business connections. According to my mother, he was doing better with Rachel and the children back home, and a structured job with clear expectations. I wished him well, but maintained my boundaries. Several former GreenVista clients had transferred to Terra Renewal, often commenting on the difference in approach and results. We didn't realize how much the quality had declined until we saw your work again, the Westridge Association president told me. It's like night and day. The professional community had also taken notice. I had been asked to speak at industry conferences about sustainable landscaping practices and invited to consult on municipal water conservation initiatives. The reputation I had built personally had outlasted the company I had been forced to leave behind. The healing process had been gradual but steady. Initially, I had cycled through anger, grief, and resentment when thinking about what happened with GreenVista. Over time, those emotions softened into something more like detached understanding. My family had acted according to their limitations and values, however flawed. I had responded by creating something better. One of the most valuable lessons had been about business structure and protection. I had consulted extensively with attorneys to ensure Terra Renewal was established with proper safeguards. No family member had any connection to the ownership or governance of the new company. While this might seem like a lesson in distrust, I viewed it as a lesson in appropriate boundaries. The experience had also taught me about mentorship and giving back. I had established an internship program at Terra Renewal specifically for young entrepreneurs interested in sustainable business practices. 3 days each month, I taught a class at the community college about small business development, emphasizing both practical skills and ethical considerations. Your story about losing your first business actually helped me protect mine. One student told me, after sharing his own family's attempt to take control of his startup, I got everything in writing and maintained majority ownership because of what you shared. Perhaps most surprisingly, the experience had opened me to personal relationships in a new way. For years, I had prioritized building my business over developing connections outside of work. After losing GreenVista, I recognized that my identity couldn't be solely tied to professional achievements. I had begun dating Jessica, an environmental attorney I met through a botanical garden fundraiser. For the first time, I was building a relationship with someone who appreciated me for who I was, not what I could provide. This evening, I was meeting her parents for dinner, the kind of normal, healthy family interaction that had been rare in my own experience. The contrast between my past and present circumstances sometimes felt surreal, as if I had stepped into someone else's life. As I walked through the botanical garden project, checking final details before next week's opening ceremony, I reflected on the twisted path that had led me here. Losing GreenVista had been painful, but it had forced me to rebuild in a way that better reflected my true values and vision. Sometimes the worst experiences lead to the best outcomes if you have the courage to walk away and start again. The irony wasn't lost on me. My father had justified giving my business to Mason by saying he has kids to feed. You can start over. He had been right about one thing: I could start over. What he hadn't anticipated was that I would create something far better than what had been taken from me. In the end, walking away hadn't been an act of surrender, but one of self-respect and determination. Watching the old business collapse hadn't brought me joy, but it had validated my business principles and practices. My success wasn't about revenge, but about living well, according to my own values. As the sun began to set over the garden, casting long shadows across the native grasses and flowering perennials, I felt a sense of peace that had been long in coming. The path forward was clear and bright, unburdened by the family dynamics that had constrained me for so long. Have you ever had to walk away from something you built or loved because staying would cost too much of your soul? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the greatest growth. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more about building success on your own terms. And remember, true success isn't just measured in dollars, but in creating something that aligns with your deepest values. Thanks for listening to my journey, and I wish you courage on your own path forward.